Deputy Minister of Defense Anatoly Antonov,
Minister of the Russian Federation, Chief of the Main Operational Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Sergei Rudskoy, and Chief of the National Center for State Defense Control, Lieutenant General Mikhail Mizintsev. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. International terrorism is the world's biggest threat today. It is not an imaginary threat. It is very real, and many countries, particularly Russia, have first-hand experience of suffering from it. The notorious Islamic State is the absolute leader of international terrorism, but this raging monster of international terrorism is something we can combat and defeat. Russian airspace forces have evidently demonstrated that over the past 2 months. We are convinced that in order to defeat ISIS, it is instrumental to deal a crushing blow to its sources of funding, as Russian President Vladimir Putin has pointed out on many occasions. Terrorism without money is a beast without fangs. Illegal oil revenues are one of the main sources of income for the terrorists in Syria. According to some reports, they make about $2 billion a year on illegal oil trade and spend that money to recruit new fighters all over the world and provide them with weapons, munitions, and hardware. That is why ISIS has been so careful to protect its illegal oil production infrastructure in Syria and Iraq. The main destination for this stolen oil from Syria and Iraq is Turkey. According to reports, this illegal business involves the country's senior political leadership, including President Erdogan and his family members. We have spoken on many occasions about how dangerous it is to court terrorists. It is the same as putting out a fire with gasoline, and fire can spread from one country onto other countries. And that is exactly what we've been seeing in the Middle East. Today, we will present to you only part of the facts we have on hand that prove that there is a single team acting in the region composed of criminals and Turkish elites who have conspired to steal oil from their neighbors. On an industrial scale, this oil is transported along a rolling pipeline of thousands of tanker trucks, and it's transported to Turkish territory. Today we will present to you hard facts that the destination for the stolen oil is Turkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is impossible to achieve a real victory against ISIS without shutting down its sources of funding. As Deputy Defense Minister Anatoly Antonov has already mentioned, illegal oil trade is the main source of income for terrorists. In order to eliminate this source of financing, the Russian Airspace Force have been delivering airstrikes on oil extraction, storage, refining and transportation facilities in ISIS-controlled areas on the territory of Syria. Over the past 2 months, Russian airstrikes have inflicted damage on 32 oil production facilities, 11 refineries, and 23 oil pumping stations. A total of 1,080 tanker trucks carrying oil and petroleum products have been destroyed. This has enabled us to reduce the illegal oil turnover in Syria by almost 50%. By the conservative estimate, the revenues of this terrorist group amounted to $3 million a day, and now multiplied by 4 years. And after our strikes, the volume of oil and petroleum products revenues decreased from 3 to 1.5 million US dollars. However, terrorist organizations continue to receive considerable financial resources as well as weapons, ammunition and other supplies. Certain nations, primarily Turkey, are directly involved in Islamic State's large-scale business projects, thereby aiding the terrorists. The General Staff of the Russian Federation Armed Forces has irrefutable evidence of Turkey involvement based on aerial and space reconnaissance data. We will only show you part of the data that is available on hand. We have identified 3 main oil transportation routes from ISIS-controlled Syrian and Iraqi territories into Turkey. The western route leads to Mediterranean ports. The northern route leads to the Batman oil refinery on the territory of Turkey, and the eastern one ends at a large transshipment base in Cizre. We will show you the entire chain of oil supplies into Turkey, from extraction to refining facilities. Along the western route, hydrocarbons produced from the oil fields near Raqqa are transported mainly during the night time to the northwest of Syria by motor vehicles, and from there on via the settlement of Azaz to the ports of Dertyol and Iskenderun. The image made on November the 13th shows the stretch of the highway near the town of Azaz linking Turkey and Syria, where you can see a concentration of vehicles carrying petroleum products. The area A, located on the Turkish side, shows 240 oil tanker trucks and semi-trailer vehicles. In the area B, located on the Syrian side, you can see 46 oil tanker trucks and vehicles waiting to cross the border.
We know that some of those tanker trucks try to mask themselves as semi-trailers. A similar picture can be observed near the town of Reynhanli. Despite the fighting in the Aleppo province, you can see an uninterrupted flow of motor vehicles near the border, and concentrations of vehicles on the Turkish side of the border. You can see semi-trailers crossing the border with no impediments. In this area, the border is controlled by Jabhat al-Nusra fighters who freely let tanker trucks and semi-trailers loaded with oil to pass to Turkey. Those vehicles are not inspected on the Turkish side of the border either, and we see hundreds of such vehicles. A photo taken on November 16th near Reynhanli, you see a concentration of about 260 tanker trucks and semi-trailers in the exact vicinity of the Turkish border. And in Area B, you see up to 160 motor vehicles that have just crossed the border. And near the checkpoint, you see a convoy of about 100 vehicles moving toward the border. Space reconnaissance has established that after crossing the border, semi-trailers and tanker trucks move for Dertyol and Iskenderun, which have special piers there for oil tankers, where some of the oil is transloaded and delivered further to other countries, and the remaining part is used within Turkey, is refined within Turkey. Every day, one oil tanker is loaded. At this picture taken on November 25th, you see a concentration of tankers waiting to be loaded. In Dertyol, you can see up to 395 vehicles, and Iskenderun about 60. One of the large centers of oil extraction and refining controlled by ISIS is an area of the town Deir ez-Zor. There is a large number of refineries, one of which you can see on the screen right now. In this area, we constantly spot tanker trucks waiting to be loaded. You can see a picture of convoys not far away from each other. And this picture taken on October 18th near Deir ez-Zor by space surveillance has detected a total of 1,722 tanker trucks, mainly going along, mainly placed along makeshift parking spots. We need to point out that following Russian airstrikes against ISIS oil infrastructure, the number of tanker trucks and their concentrations in this and other areas of Syria has considerably decreased. Not to mention the horrendous environmental consequences of this illegal oil production. The terrorists have basically created real oil reservoirs next to their oil wells. After oil is loaded, motor vehicles from eastern Syria move toward Turkey, toward the Kamishia checkpoint, where they wait to cross the border. On these photos taken in August this year, we spotted hundreds of tanker trucks and semi-trailers moving to and fro the Turkish border. Eventually, most of the oil transported from eastern Syria winds up at Batman refinery. It's a large refinery located in Turkey, 100 kilometers from the Syrian border. The third route for transporting oil to Turkey lies from the oil deposits of northeast Syria and northwest Iraq through the border areas of Karachokh, Chamhanik in Syria, Itawan and Zaho in Iraq. At this picture, we can see concentrations of tanker trucks and semi-trailers near these towns.
On the 28th of November, near Karachokh, we identified 50 tanker trucks at the territory of the oil pumping station. The image made in August on the Syrian-Iraqi border near Chamhanik, you can see 380 vehicles. No changes have been there since then. We still see that there is a large number of tanker trucks moving between Syria and Iraq, according to our reconnaissance data. An even bigger number of tanker trucks are registered in Iraqi areas close to Turkish border. These are the areas controlled by ISIS, and their number has not decreased within the past 3 months. The footage made on the 14th of November near Tavan and Zaho in Iraq shows up to 1,104 tanker trucks and semi-trailers in this area. So it's hard to overlook these objects, but there have been no strikes on these objects by the US-led coalition. We've only registered a 3-time increase of strategic drones. So taking this in regard, and the fact that our planes do not target facilities in Iraq, we will share the information to the US-led coalition. We will give the information on the tanker tracks which are operated by ISIS. This information is currently on the screen. It will be then posted on the website. From the border areas of Iraq, the tanker tracks move freely across the Iraqi-Turkish border near Zakho, and from there oil is transported to refineries. The closest one is in Batman, which was mentioned earlier, or to the biggest logistics hub near Silopi. The space image made on the 14th of November shows 3,220 petro trucks and semi-trailers. So we can see no comments, and no comments need to be made on the size of this illegal business is impressive. The fleet of terrorists features up to 8,500 tanker tracks, which transport up to 200,000 barrels of oil daily. The Russian Air Force will continue to target oil infrastructure of ISIS. We also call on our colleagues from the coalition to do the same. Thank you for your attention. Colleagues, you have been presented with convincing and irrefutable evidence of mass and brazen theft from a sovereign state. From sovereign states, I'm referring to Syria and Turkey, the theft of their energy resources. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the financial revenues from the resale of petroleum products are not just used to enrich the top military and political leadership of Turkey, but in large volumes they are then returned to the Syrian Arab Republic in the form of weapons, ammunition, and mercenaries of different kinds. Only over the past week, from the territory of Turkey, ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra Front were joined by up to 2,000 militants. They also received some 120 tons of ammunition and 250 vehicles of different purposes. According to our trusted reconnaissance data, Turkey has held these activities for a long time. It's been done on a regular basis, and we believe Turkey does not plan to stop these activities. According to the information we have on hand on the size, we also have the information on hand on the size of the supplies by Turkey of weapons, ammunition, explosives components, communication means and other material, and also the training of militants on the training camps on the territory of Turkey. This information will be presented next week.
Dear colleagues, we have a lot of people from mass media here with us today, and many more of your colleagues will be able to see broadcasts of this briefing. Therefore, I would like to tell you the following. We appreciate the work that journalists do. We know that there are many courageous, brave people in the journalist community who do their job properly with dignity. Today, we have presented to you evidence of how illegal oil trade is carried out, is operated, which is used to finance terrorism. We have presented to you specific evidence which we believe can be used by investigative journalists for their investigations, for their stories. We are confident that with your help, truth will prevail. We know how much Erdogan's words are worth. He has already been caught red-handed by Turkish journalists who unearthed arms and munition supplies from Turkey to insurgents masked as humanitarian supplies. For that, the journalists have been jailed. Turkish leaders, including President Erdogan, will not resign nor admit anything, even if their faces were smeared with stolen oil. Maybe I'm being a bit too blunt, but our comrades in arms have fallen at the hands of Turkish military. The cynicism of the Turkish government has no borders, no limits. Just look at what they're doing. They have went into a neighboring country, they're plundering it, and if hosts should be in the way, that means they would need to be removed. I would like to emphasize, however, that Erdogan's resignation is not our objective. That should be up to the people of Turkey. Our purpose is to seal off, to shut down the sources of funding for terrorists through a concerted effort. We will continue to unearth the facts of plunder by Turkey that it's been inflicting on its neighbors. Maybe I'm being too blunt, but one can only entrust this kind of illicit business to their closest ones. No one in the West has had any concerns about the fact that a son of President Erdogan is head of a large oil company, whereas his son-in-law, the president's son-in-law, has been appointed energy minister. Could that be possible in any other country? Like I said, this kind of business you can't entrust to anyone except for your closest ones, your family members. We have yet to see any evaluation or any comments on that fact in Western media, but it's impossible to hide the truth. Of course, the dirty oil money will continue to do their work, and I'm pretty sure we are about to see a lot of speculation in the press maintaining that what you've seen today is fake evidence. Well, if that is so, let them make those areas available to journalists, the areas that we implicated today. It is obvious that only part of the information about the horrendous crimes of the Turkish elites have been brought to light today. The elites that have been directly financing international terrorism. We believe that any sane, any journalist with integrity must engage in the fight against this plague of the 21st century, terrorism. History shows that objective journalism can be a powerful instruments in combating powerful corruption schemes. We urge you to engage in journalist investigations to unearth these schemes for extracting oil illegally and marketing it from its extraction all the way through to its end users, especially since through Turkish ports it is being further delivered to other regions. The Russian Defense Ministry will continue to publicize new evidence regarding oil shipments from Turkey to other countries, and will keep updating you on the operation in Syria conducted by Russian air and space forces. Let's join our efforts and we will keep destroying the sources of funding for terrorism in Syria, and you can engage in our activities outside that country. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, all of the materials presented today have been published at the Defense Ministry website in Russian and in English. We have with us today colleagues from some of the major international media. Some of them have already been to the air base in Crimea, and they've seen with their own eyes the operations of Russian air and space forces. We will keep updating the international press on the events based on hard facts and data from aerial surveillance, including data obtained during the visits from international press to the Russian air base in Syria. We'll continue sharing with you the information we have, publishing it online. We hope for cooperation. Thank you very much.
And please don't forget to hand back the headsets for simultaneous.
Right, you've just been watching a briefing done by Russia's Defense Ministry, and in the studio today with me we have Murat Gazdiev to discuss what's been said there, the major highlights, and one of which is actually that Russia has produced the satellite images proving that the illegal trade of oil, the movements of oil from crossing into Turkey. Well, we will discuss it in more detail throughout the day. Here today in the studio with me is Murat Gazdiev, our correspondent with whom we've just been watching this briefing and listening in. Murat, a very groundbreaking, I would say, revelations there and proofs, in fact, of what Turkey is involved in and the illegal movements of oil there. What do you think?
It just continues on to what Vladimir Putin said right straight in the aftermath of Turkey downing that Russian jet, that Turkey is directly helping the Islamic State, helping Al-Qaeda, helping terrorists in Syria. And in fact, I think we've got that soundbite. We've got exactly what Vladimir Putin said.
I'll say, take a listen. We actually we might have a chance to take a listen to it later in our conversation, but right now.